Marco Rubio, everybody's favorite. And we're not going to go through the whole entire dossier, but I'm bringing this up for those who aren't aware or have read this yet. Check it out. Ken Klippenstein, no longer with The Intercept, um, posted this. It's the Rubio dossier. It's one of the things that had gotten him banned from Twitter. I think it was for like a week or two. Then they reinstated him. He also published a J.D. Vance dossier that the Trump camp had put together. And it's a lot of the feelings and resentments that they had towards Marco Rubio. And the reason I brought that up is because we're going to look at the evolution of Marco Rubio before Trump turned around and decided, like, you know what, I'm going to work with that guy. I'm going to get him. I'm going to have him on my team. He's the greatest.
All right,
He's
let's watch
the
those.
best. But yeah, he's going to be Secretary of State now. So
Yep.
That's fun. That's fun, dude.
If he builds the wall the way he built Trump Towers, he'll be using illegal immigrant labor to do it. The second...
Ooh, got him. Lived up, dude. I'm so lived up right now.
Here's a guy that buys a house for $179,000. He sells it to a lobbyist who's probably here for $380,000, and then legislation is passed. You tell me about this guy. This is what we're going to have as president.
Here's the guy that inherited $200 million. If he hadn't inherited $200 million, you know where Donald Trump would be right now? Selling watches in Manhattan.
I have to say, he lied this time. He lied. 100%. 100%.
You lied about the Polish workers.
Yeah.
You lied to the students of Trump University.
That's Senator years ago.
Oh, he lied 38 years ago. All right, I guess there's a statute of limitation on lies.
Well, I mean, seems that Marco Rubio sure thinks that there's a statute of limitation when it comes to lies.
Mm-hmm.
What do I mean by that?
I want to start this evening with CNN's Jim Sciutto, who is joining me on the phone on this breaking news. Jim, I just want to first get your take on hearing that it doesn't appear
Be right back.
this
I'm going
is
to go
formal
refill my
yet,
coffee cup.
But if Trump is leaning in this direction, and that is what all of our sourcing is indicating at this hour, what the significance of a Marco Rubio as a Trump pick for Secretary of State would be, in your view?
For one, it very much, Caitlin, puts China at the center of Trump's foreign policy, the combination of Rubio and Waltz, both of whom are big China hawks. Rubio's portfolio on China.
So for those that are watching, basically, the election results that you saw and seeing Trump get into office was because of the inability to have effective messaging from the Democrats, because ultimately they work for the same benefactors as Republicans. But because of that lack, Republicans were able to poise themselves as the common sense party. They were able to poise themselves as the peaceful dove party. They were not going to be intervening in any wars, right? They were the ones who wanted to get out of Afghanistan and Iraq. But this pick right here for Secretary of State shows that this anti-China rhetoric that the United States has been very fond of exclusively over the past like 15, 20 years. Because we needed an enemy to replace, right? Once the Soviet Union collapsed, the United States needed to be able to focus on a foreign enemy, a collective foreign enemy that you could present as both a power and as, you know, not true competition at the same time. And China was the perfect target. But China, economically and, you know, through the military, has in a lot of ways caught up, if not exceeded, the United States. And picks like Rubio is basically showing you for the next 4 years, there's going to be a lot more violent rhetoric that is going to be made towards China. I think one of the places that people should look at or look for is Taiwan, and exactly what Trump is going to do legislatively that's going to affect Taiwan, and thus kind of maybe instigate some sort of reaction or some sort of incident between Taiwan and China. That is something to definitely look for. I think we're going to see accelerated efforts from Israel. And I think we're going to see accelerated efforts in Ukraine. And these are all things that people from multiple political ideologies all kind of either want the United States not to fund the army or anything like that, or ultimately just don't want to be involved at all. And not so much isolationist, but more anti-interventionist.
And it goes back years. He's drawn attention to China's trade practices. He's pushed for restrictions on selling advanced technology to China. He's highlighted China's mass incarceration and forced labor of Uyghurs in Xinjiang, as well as China's intelligence gathering inside this country. So he has a deep and long resume on China. And listen, it shouldn't be surprising, given that Trump himself, of course, has made China a target both of his national security policy, but also his economic policy, the discussions during the campaign of imposing significant tariffs on Chinese goods. This would bring to his team a Rubio and a Waltz, two individuals with history there and focus on China.
And the issue is, just because Trump is a megalomaniac in a lot of ways, Trump is going to try to get into a pissing match with China, and people around him have convinced him, and he's kind of convinced himself ultimately, that the American economy can stand up against China's economy tit for tat. But the issue is a lot of the wealth that is a part of America, a lot of it's inflated numbers, a lot of it's just kind of like ghost numbers, is a very like layman's way of putting it, right?
Mhm.
So you're not going to be able to go blow for blow with China because China has the majority of manufacturing. Like, they're the ones who control the majority of manufacturing. We don't really produce that much here. We import a lot of goods. We don't make goods. We import them. The only thing that we export, the only thing that we're good at when it comes to making is missiles, guns, spy satellites, aircraft. But even then, aircraft, not so much. Boeing's kind of gone to shit.
Yeah.
Um,
It's just crazy
but
to
yeah,
me when I hear them say like the prisoned in population of the Uyghur community out there and the slave labor and like yeah, like that's absolutely true what's happening in China, but America has more people imprisoned per capita than the entire goddamn world. And I'm sorry, but just recently saw a news outlet reporting on the fact that McDonald's is hiring prison inmates for pennies on the dollar daily for McDonald's. Like these regular like what's the difference? We're doing it to our own community as well, imprisoning people and making them work for practically slave labor wages, just like what's happening in China with the Uyghur community. It's just it's so ironic when I see that kind of
oh
stuff.
no, you better be careful because people are going to try to tell you no, it wasn't that at all. They just assimilated.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
shit's stupid.
And also, it's crazy to me that Marco Rubio is going to be our Secretary of State. Like,
Yeah,
that's wild to me
fucking
because
Warhawk, dude.
yeah, because when you hear like Secretary of State, at least in my head, I think Hillary Clinton when she did that interview when
Yep.
she killed the leader of Libya, Gaddafi, where she's like, "We
Yeah.
came, we saw, he died," and
Ha ha
that's
ha ha ha. Yeah.
yeah, that's going to be his spot. That's crazy to me.
Well, hopefully he gives us a good sound clip like that. But and while you were gone, I was just talking about the fact that like we are going to see an accelerated rate of bombs and things of that nature being dropped. on people in Palestine by Israel. We're going to see an accelerated effort and supplement of money and even soldiers in Ukraine. It's just we're going to be seeing a multi-front war, and I think that's kind of like the evolution that we've got to as society, where wars in the old days obviously would just be one war that's getting fought at once because you can't have multiple fronts. There was somebody who tried doing that, didn't work out for him too well. It was a big issue, and I think now we're kind of seeing the repeat of that. Oh, hi, Jada, and we I'm hopeful that I'm wrong, but I definitely do think that we're going to see the American interest become a lot more than just sending money to these different conflict areas.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see how we do that, especially, I mean, people have been throwing the word draft out for years and years, but with this new Ken Kegsneth, whatever guy that's going to be in one of the cabinet picks as well, with him saying that women should not be in the military. Y'all better hold on to your balls, man. They're gonna be drafting y'all like all you men like fucking crazy. And we're not allowed in military. Women are not gonna be allowed to be part of the draft. I'm telling you guys, like the amount of wars that we're about to have and taking out half of the fighting and a lot of people not proper most likely choosing not to go into these wars that Trump's gonna start. There's gonna be drafts. And you men are all first in line.
Well,
Every one of you.
and don't forget they come out in posture and say things along the lines of like, oh well, we don't want women in the military. But if there ever does become a point where we're fighting a multi-front war, it will get to a point just like you saw in Ukraine, where they're going to start asking women to fight. They're going to start arming civilians.
Yep.
So it is going to happen too. But yeah, it is important to remember, like, hey, ultimately, like there are consequences to elections. I'm not operating in the sense that a lot of liberals are, where they're like, oh, haha, well, people who are people of color have voted for Trump, you're gonna have to deal, because I think that's stupid. That it's reductive. It's counterproductive. It doesn't do anything. It just creates more resentment, more animosity, more issues. It's just not a good look.
Right.
It's
It's
just
not
not good
it's not good
politics.
it's not good to make fun of him, but it's good to let them know and show them the consequences of their actions, though.
Oh no, 100%. But you have to do it from a place of good faith.
Yes,
Uh,
absolutely. I agree.
I'm gonna return to the video. I'm gonna grab a quick drink though, so
Yeah,
hold it down for a minute if you don't mind.
got it.
I'll say this as well.
All
That,
right, now that he's gone, all
given
right, let's start partying,
the
everybody.
concern
I'm just
about
kidding.
some of Trump's foreign policy positions, particularly among Democrats, the outgoing Biden administration, but also some more traditional Republicans, I think it's safe to say that both Rubio
I
and
should have waited
Waltz
like 10 more seconds,
are
y'all.
not out there, as it were, right? That their positions on China are very common with other Republicans, but also, frankly, it's a bipartisan position right now in Washington, a far more aggressive China policy, both in terms of national
Oh
security
yeah,
and
China.
trade. Their positions on Ukraine, for instance, Rubio has been a skeptic of additional
Yep, that's
aid
gonna end.
going there. He, like other Republicans, has said it's time to bring the war to an end. But he is not a Republican who has praised Russia. He's not a Republican who has denied Russia's blame for the invasion, right? So even as he has been skeptical of additional aid,
So then what's their
he's not
opinion on
from the wing of the
NATO?
Republican
Because that's the
Party
whole
that has
point of the
questioned whether the
Russia-Ukraine
U.S.
thing.
should have been there in any way at all before.
Yeah, certainly a different view in that sense. Of course, the question is what happens now and with what we've seen on the ground. Jim Sciutto, thank you for that. And on this breaking news, I also want to bring in CNN anchor and chief congressional correspondent Manu Raju. Because Manu, as we were looking at this, I just want to note what Kristen Holmes is reporting on top of this. She says that she heard from a source this morning who thought Trump was leaning toward Rick Grenell, of course, who served as his acting director of national intelligence. Before that, the U.S. ambassador to Germany. We know Senator Bill Hagerty of Tennessee was also in the running for these two positions, though he seemed to have fallen out of the contention a few hours ago. Manu, though, when you look at this, if this is what Trump ultimately formally goes with, and a caveat there just because it's Trump, I imagine Rubio would have a pretty easy time getting confirmed in the Senate.
Don't buy your electricity. Generate your own.
Oh no, we got stuck with a commercial.
Bags full of cash for your power. As a matter of fact,
Hey y'all,
you can
that
take
is
advantage of
B-roll
this new
footage.
renewable energy savings
I have
program
that if
without
anyone
an
ever
upfront
wants to
cost.
use that
And then you don't
burning
have to
money
worry
or
about
breaking
energy
TV
prices going up,
footage.
paying for taxes
I have
and
that.
delivery fees
Hey,
from
I
your
have that
utility
footage
provider,
too.
or worrying about the power going out ever
This fucking
again.
commercial.
You
Yo,
lived
I
all
can
of
make
that in the
commercials,
past.
y'all.
Add equity to
I
your
can make
home after
commercials.
installation,
I have
have
this
the
shit.
same bill forever. Yes, even 20 years.
Yeah, no question
Thanks.
about that, Caitlin. In fact, if it were Rick Grinnell, that could potentially have been a problem for some Republican senators here. Rubio is different, though. He's been a long-time senator. He's got a lot of allies in the Senate Republican Conference. He's one of those senators who has straddled both the Republican establishment world and
You're
the Trump
ridiculous, by the
MAGA
way.
world. And he is,
Thanks.
despite of all of his criticism against Donald Trump back in 2016, he has very much aligned
Thank you.
himself and been a chief defender of Donald Trump through his 4 years in office and on the campaign trail and the like. And his foreign policy views do align to some extent with the Republican establishment, but he also has broken with them as well. He did vote against.
So, what he's talking about right there, too, anti-Trump 2016, now he's loyalist. That's why when any of your friends try to share a video with you, it's like Republican infighting, it's going down. They're going to take themselves out. No, they're not. No, they're not. You know what they're doing? They're fucking with liberals. Not liberal candidates, but liberal voters. They're like, yo, we're going to get them to believe they actually have a chance that anything positive is going to happen for them.
Mm-hmm.
Against the big foreign policy bill of this past year. That was a $95 billion aid package that included aid to Taiwan, aid to Israel, aid to Ukraine. He called it legislative blackmail, that bill. He contended that it should not have been all tied together. It should have done more should have went after border security issues as well, even as Ukraine was clamoring for that money at that critical moment earlier this year. So he has broken from a lot of his colleagues, including the Republican leadership, on that issue, but he is very much on Trump's side here. And assuming this pick goes through, I do expect him probably have no problems to get confirmed. But if he is confirmed to this post, then that opens up a vacancy in Florida for a Senate seat. This would give the governor there, Ron DeSantis, the ability to name a replacement to that post. So it would not affect the current balance of power right now. But I can tell you, without talking to too many Republicans at the moment, with this news just breaking,
that dude's licking his chops. He's finally relevant
many
again.
of them will be happy to hear this news if it does happen.
It's sugar, man.
Major pick for Secretary of State, someone they
I'm surprised he
believe
hasn't
can
gotten
carry
picked
out
for
America's
something
foreign
yet.
policy effectively on the world stage. Caitlin.
Yeah, we saw
Ron
his
DeSantis is
fellow
unlikable.
Florida senator already coming out and endorsing this idea on Twitter. When
Good for Florida, not nationally.
Manu, can I ask you that before you go? Because we're also going to talk in a minute about the National Security Advisor pick and Mike Waltz, a Florida congressman. Now, 2 Florida lawmakers, it sounds like, are going to be inside the Trump administration. On that, with the House margin, of course, House Republicans were waiting to see if they have the majority here. It was already a pretty slim margin. I mean, obviously, Mike Waltz is in a pretty safe Republican district, but what would that mean, in the time that it takes to call a special election if he's going there and Elise Stefanik is going to the United Nations in New York?
Yeah, it's not good news. In fact, I talked to a number of Republicans tonight in the aftermath of these 2 appointments moving ahead. They're making clear that they're not totally happy about this because they're worried that if Donald Trump were to name more Republicans to the post, that it would just make it even harder to pass bills in this Republican House. This majority, well, you're right. We don't know exactly if they do have the majority.
I wonder if,
they aren't tracking
one thing I'm thinking about
majority, but
during this?
we're looking at anywhere from 220.
I'm wondering if Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to start playing
for the Republicans.
but spoiler just because of how pissed off she is.
Closer and closer to making it harder to pass.
Wait, is she
bills,
mad?
if they
Why?
lose 1 or 2 votes on any single bill, that
She's
could stop
been
the
bad.
entire
I have not paid
Republican
attention to
agenda.
her at
And not
all.
only that, Caitlin, there's also a big
Yeah, no,
speaker's
she's
vote
been
that has to
bad.
happen on January 3rd. Mike
shit.
Johnson is running for speaker.
What was that
They have
one
the majority.
Nazi
He has
lady
very
that
little
Trump had
margin for
around his
error.
campaign
He's lost 2
for a
votes
while?
already. 2 members already gone to the
That he ended up
administration.
kicking
So
away?
A lot riding on the size of the Republican
have no
majority.
God, I wish I
idea.
could
These
remember
hopeful
her fucking
Republicans,
name.
they hope Donald Trump doesn't pick more House Republicans.
Yeah, I'm sure Mike Johnson is keeping a close count of that. Manu, thank you for that. Also joining us on this breaking news is former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger, who served on the Foreign Affairs Committee.
Boo, Adam
Congressman, I just wonder,
Kinzinger.
first, what is
Boo.
your initial reaction to the news that Trump is likely to pick Marco Rubio as his Secretary of State?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it's actually pretty good news. You know, Marco Rubio has been obviously kind of changing. I think he even voted against Ukraine aid, which was very surprising when I learned that. But he's not a, you know, by no means is he like a neocon. So obviously that was important for Donald Trump. But he's somebody that understands foreign policy, and that's going to be important. So as far as picks go, I think compared to some of the other names that were floating around, people that don't have any experience with foreign policy, I think this is a pretty good one.
I mean, what does it say to you about what foreign policy would look like in a second Trump term? Because, I mean, they are about to inherit massive crises that are playing out across the world, especially, obviously, Russia's war in Ukraine, as you just mentioned there. We've seen what Senator Rubio has said in the past about Putin and where that stands now. But also the war in Gaza. As a top aide to Benjamin Netanyahu is here in Palm Beach right now. As I speak, Barak Ravid reporting that he met with Donald Trump. I mean, these are real crises that they're about to confront, in addition to what they don't know they could be dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what the pick of Marco Rubio says for what their foreign policy is going to be. Again, and I'm willing to, you know, give as much leeway as possible, but you know, Marco has shown his ability to kind of change for whatever Donald Trump demands. So it really comes down to what does Donald Trump demand. On the Russia issue, you just got to take Donald Trump at his word.
Laura Loomer.
He thinks he can solve
That's
this
who I'm
in
thinking
24
of.
hours.
Ah,
and
Laura
Vice
Loomer.
President said, I don't care what happens in Ukraine. I hope, though,
Because that whole fucking
they're actually
relationship
going to be
between
able to,
those two is
if
so
they're going to cut a
weird.
deal with Russia, to cut a good deal, whatever that looks like, but one that makes sure that Ukraine is able to defend itself into the future. In terms of Israel, look, this is continuing to be just a really complicated issue. There's no doubt that I think they will put less constraints on Israel from this administration. I don't think that's a question, and probably will be much more aggressive at confronting Iran, because the current administration has been kind of like living under this idea that they can somehow resurrect the Iran nuclear deal. They're not going to be able to, and so definitely be more confrontational to Iran. And really quickly, if you look at it, Iran, North Korea, Russia, China is all kind of in axis at the moment. They're all in alliance. So all of that is going to be important.
Three-toed Marge. I love that, by the way, Kayla.
I left my job to
I mean,
spend
of
more time with
course,
my
like
children.
North Korea, Russia,
It's great
China,
knowing
those
that
things
we're
are like
all
in an
covered
axis
for emergencies and annual
against
checkups.
American
New law, lower prices.
westernized
Healthcare.gov.
colonial
Enroll by
policies.
December 15th.
And then we're just gonna turn them into the villains. Ugh! This reactionary fucking everything, it just drives me, it's driving me insane.
Isn't it great?
No, because we would just we something happens and then we just react to it instead of looking at the root cause of things. I'm so sick of this. Every little thing, every scope, every little bubble you can think of in every part of the world, that's all we do. We just react to something happening instead of looking at the root cause. It's nuts. It's driving me crazy.